Batman is one of the most iconic superheroes of all time, and because of that he's had a lot of movies over the years with various different actors portraying the Caped Crusader. However, today I'm going to be ranking the Batman movies from Tim Burton's first Batman movie in 1989 all the way up to... I wasn't originally going to add in Batman vs Superman because I'm not sure if that's 100% a Batman movie, but thinking about it, there's enough Batman in there for me to justify putting it in this list. This is also a Patreon suggested video, so thank you very much for your suggestion. You also did say don't put in Batman vs Superman, so I do apologise. However, I do want to talk about it because there's a few talking points there. As always guys, this is just my own personal opinion, so if you happen to disagree, who cares? Like, my opinion shouldn't change yours. So I'm going to go from worst to best because let's just get the crap out of the way. And I think it should come as no surprise that in dead last place, we are going to be going with Batman and Robin. This is an awful movie, and to be fair, pretty much everybody involved with this film will come out and say, yes, this is in fact a terrible movie. Thing is, even as a kid, I knew it was bad. And for me, that's how you know a movie's bad, because when you're a kid, how many times do you go back to a nostalgia film from when you were a kid and you watch it again, you think, what the why did I like that? Batman and Robin was always one of those films for me where I was just like, I don't like any of this, and I'm like 5, so what's it going to be like when I'm 25? And I'll tell you what it's like when I'm 25. Fucking shit. I mean, the fact that George Clooney now rips on this movie, where did it go wrong is the question though. Personally, I think it's just too camp. The contrast of what they're trying to do doesn't quite work. You've got Bane, who's a big dumb lump. You've got Uma Thurman, who is putting in the worst performance of her career. You've got the cheesiest version of Batman and Robin since the 1960s version with Adam West and Burt Ward, and they're even more cheesy. You've got Alicia Silverstone. I don't even know what she's doing in this film. She has no fucking right to be in this film. Batgirl is a really good character. You wouldn't have got that impression from this film, no. And let's not forget Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, who is obviously the worst thing in the movie. Actually, do you know what? That's not fair, because as cringy and as awful as Arnie is in this film, he does have some of the most iconic lines. So in a awful, not good, obvious way, I do actually kind of like Mr. Freeze in this film. Next up, we're going to be talking about the other Joel Schumacher Batman film, which is, of course, Batman Forever. Val Kilmer is not the worst choice for Batman, he's just a bit dull. Also, this film introduces us to Bat Nipples. Was it this one, or did he introduce it in the Tim Burton ones? Either way, Bat Nipples are no good. Can we just address that here and now? Don't do Bat Nipples. The villains in this movie are just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey, and then you've got Tommy Lee Jones, who is also trying to act like Jim Carrey, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, Two-Face and the Riddler, they are two very, very good, yet very, very different Batman characters. The way that they're portrayed in this film, they are very sort of Joker light, which with the Riddler I guess you can kind of do because some versions have done that before, but in a film like this you can't have two Joker characters really, because that's not who they are. Two-Face isn't really like that, and the Riddler I think works a lot better if he's more intelligent and methodical, and hopefully the Robert Pattinson movie, The Batman or whatever it's called, hopefully that version of the Riddler is going to show people exactly why this version of the Riddler is fucking shit. Again, it's over the top, it's cheesy, it's camp, it's clearly an advert for toys, just like Batman and Robin is. Val Kilmer is a really boring Batman. Like, at least with George Clooney, you can say that he's flat out bad. Val Kilmer, I wouldn't even say is bad as Batman. He's just a bit non-existent. Overall, these two Joel Schumacher movies are clearly at the very bottom of the pile. But next up, we're going to go with a couple of controversial choices. Now, for me personally, I am not a huge Tim Burton fan. I never really have been. I don't really like his films, to be honest. They're not my sort of thing. So in saying that, I'm going to go with Batman Returns, closely followed by the original 1989 movie. I want to talk about them at the same time because the problems that I have with these films are present in both of them. I will say though that the original one, 1989, I will put that one slightly ahead, but not by much. Now the reason why is because, like I say, I'm not a fan of Tim Burton films, and I think Batman Returns especially is very much a Tim Burton film that happens to have Batman in it. And the thing is, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a bad film, because I don't think it is. I really enjoyed the portrayal of the Penguin by Danny DeVito. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, again, is awesome. I do really like Michael Keaton as Batman, but it's just the whole vibe and the world of these films that I just don't like. I don't enjoy watching them. There is some really cool moments in them though, don't get me wrong, but I think for the most part, never really want to rewatch either of these films. Now, speaking specifically now about the original 1989 Batman, straight away, funnily enough, I had this conversation the other day when we were talking about our favourite Jokers, and Jack Nicholson for me has never been up there in my personal opinion. I know, sacrilege, God forbid. The reason being though, straight away they give you a Joker origin story, which I don't like. I don't like that at all. I know the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix essentially does the same thing, but I can get on board with that a little bit more because it's not in a Batman movie, if that makes sense. I see it as a separate thing. I don't see it as, this is a Batman film, here's the origin of the villain, here's the origin of the hero, if that makes sense. Which is kind of what you get in this 1989 film. I prefer the Joker to be more ambiguous and to just be this angel of death. You know, this prince of crime who will do whatever, and you don't really know who he is, why he's doing it, what it's for, any of that sort of stuff. Whereas this, it gives you a clear backstory, and straight away I zone out. And that's me and my own fault, because you can't really knock the performance based on that, but that's just my personal preference. That takes me out of the movie straight away. Not only that, Jack Nicholson is great at performing as Jack Nicholson, and that is essentially what his Joker is. It's Jack Nicholson doing himself, really, which is fine. I don't mind him when he does that, but it doesn't really feel massively Jokery to me. It just feels like Jack Nicholson doing whatever the fuck he wants. If you like that, you like that, but me, I'm a bit indifferent to it. Again, Michael Keaton is really good as Batman. I particularly like him more as Bruce Wayne though. I've got to admit, there's something about his Bruce Wayne that I do enjoy. But overall, like, I know that they're quite low on this list and people aren't going to like that, and people are going to say, what the fuck, he's put this ahead of it and this ahead of it and blah blah blah, but it's just personal preference. For me, I just don't want to revisit these movies as much as the others that I'm going to be talking about. Next up on my list, I'm going to mention The Dark Knight Rises, which of course is the third and final installment of the Dark Knight trilogy. Now, for me personally, I do enjoy this movie, probably more than most. However, I understand the flaws that come with this movie. There are a few things in this film that are flat out ridiculous. The whole thing with the bomb at the end, how the fuck does he survive it? There's a few plot conveniences as well, like how does he get back to Gotham so quickly? Bane, whilst actually an underrated villain in the movie, I think a lot of people give him shit because of his voice, which I get. And it was, upon first viewing, quite hard to listen to and understand. But I think overall, Tom Hardy puts in a really good performance. And that scene where, I think it's in the Batcave or it's in the sewers or something, where Bane just breaks him. There's no music, you're just watching a guy get beaten up. It's really bad, in a good way. It's one of those scenes where it's like, ooh. Oh, that's rough. I think this is definitely the weakest out of the Dark Knight trilogy, but it still has its enjoyable moments. It still has epicness about it. I like the fact that it feels like the end of the story throughout the entire thing. I love the fact that it's wrapped up with the whole Robin thing at the end. That was a nice little twist. And to me, my personal interpretation of the Dark Knight trilogy, the comic books that we got in our world are the exaggerated tales of the real story, which was these movies. And when I think about it like that, I'm like, that's actually really cool, and it explains why certain things are more realistic, like Bane just wears a mask and Robin is technically his sidekick, but he's not some young kid in a red leotard and stuff like that. I think this film is too long. That's another thing that I will say. This movie is definitely way too long for what it is. It definitely feels bloated, but overall, I really enjoy it. I think the twist of Talia al Ghul is probably the worst thing in the movie, thinking about it. I don't know, it just felt obvious and it felt shoehorned in. Plus where she's like, probably some of the worst acting I've ever seen in a superhero movie. Next up then, we are going to go to the latest Batman film until, well, I mean technically there's Justice League, but Batman v Superman. Now specifically why I'm putting Batman v Superman here is because of the Ultimate Edition. Now a lot of people just saw Batman v Superman, and rightly so, criticised it and said that, well, this isn't right and that wasn't right and the portrayal of Superman is quite weak and the whole Martha thing, which I will get into. However, with the Ultimate Edition, you get a much more balanced film. You get more of Superman, therefore you get more of his perspective, therefore you understand his point of view and you also understand Batman's point of view. Now, this movie is far from perfect. I fully understand this. When this movie came out, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a disappointment. However, having said that, Ben Affleck as Batman is fucking awesome. I understand the criticisms of people saying like, oh, he just kills people. Yeah, he does, and I'm not keen on that. However, the look of Ben Affleck as Batman, the whole voice changer thing as well, I thought was really awesome. The warehouse scene, some of the way that he uses gadgets and tech, and the way that he's this haggard Bruce Wayne. I really enjoy that aspect. The very first scene of Batman v Superman is perfect in my opinion, because you understand straight away why this mortal man, this Dark Knight, this savior of Gotham, whatever you want to call him, is just like, actually yeah, everyone's praising this alien and everyone's saying like, oh, he saved everyone in Metropolis. Actually, my building was destroyed, and not only that, some people who I not only worked with but was friends with fucking died. So you know what, fuck him. And he has a very good point as well, because I mean, we see it a lot now. Evil Superman, whether it's in The Boys with Homelander, whether it's in Brightburn, whether it's in the latest Suicide Squad game that's going to come out, or in Justice, we've seen evil Superman a few times now, and the fact that it's a potential, like Bruce Wayne says in this movie, is quite an interesting angle to go, for me personally, because I like seeing the other Justice League members react and potentially have a contingency plan for whether or not Superman is bad. And at the time, Batman doesn't know if he is going to be evil or not, so he's just like, fuck that noise, I'm just going to take him out before anything can happen. The way that Batman is shot in this film, I think, is incredible. I think Zack Snyder did a really good job specifically of shooting Batman. The killing stuff, again, I'm going to repeat, I don't like. Now, the whole thing of Batman versus Superman, I enjoy that fight whilst it happens. I understand that it's a little bit flawed, and I wish Superman's side of things was done a little bit differently, as opposed to just Lex Luthor told him to do it. That, I think, is piss poor. I think Superman has plenty of motivation to go against Batman without needing Lex Luthor there. The whole thing of save Martha, who's Martha, she's me mum, alright, we're best friends now. I get that people don't like that. I'm not 100% on it. However, for me, that moment represents Batman finally seeing the humanity in Superman and seeing that he isn't just some alien who is from another world and doesn't have feelings, doesn't care about humanity, all that sort of stuff. That's the moment where he's like, oh shit, he does have some humanity there. He is actually a good person. It's not done well, don't get me wrong. However, I don't think it was as bad as the memes that have carried on years later have made it out to be, personally. I don't know, I just like this sort of gruff Batman who is haggard and has been through some shit. You know, don't get me wrong, I like young prime Batman, but I mean, when you look at stuff like The Dark Knight Returns, that is some fucking awesome Batman stuff, and I think Ben Affleck is probably the closest that we have gotten so far to that version of Batman. Next, we're going to go to Batman Begins, which of course is when Batman begins. This is of course the first Christopher Nolan Batman movie, starring Christian Bale and Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. This movie is really good. The main gripe that I have with Batman Begins is, I think a lot of people have this gripe, and it's that Cillian Murphy isn't in it enough as the Scarecrow, because I genuinely love him as the Scarecrow. I know that he appears and has cameos in the next two movies, but when this was supposed to be his movie, realistically, he doesn't do enough. That being said, everything else about Batman Begins, I love. I love his origin story. I love seeing how he becomes the man in the mask. I love his return to Gotham. I love just everything about this movie. And the thing is, in this movie, Christian Bale still sounds decent. He doesn't sound proper weird with his voice, which again has been memed to shit over the years. This one is actually quite subdued. I think the Batsuit looks awesome. I think all of his tech and his gadgets look awesome. I think Liam Neeson is a fantastic villain, and he's a really good portrayal of Ra's al Ghul, actually. And the thing is, in the film, initially you don't know who he is, and the fact that it's that twist of, oh, he's actually Ra's al Ghul, I thought that was awesome. That's why, for me personally, the Talia twist later on doesn't work, because we've already seen it done better with Ra's in the first film. There is some kick-ass action in this film as well, and direction, it is beautiful. I think everybody in this movie is cast to perfection. Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, awesome. Christian Bale as Batman, and Bruce Wayne, I think is brilliant. I think Rachel isn't great, personally, but there you are. In either of the films, by the way, not just Katie Holmes, I think Maggie Gyllenhaal isn't great either. And overall, this is just a fucking awesome Batman film. But of course, number one, it had to be, didn't it? It had to be The Dark Knight. This is one of, if not my favourite film of all time. And I know that some people are going to say, it's obviously not the best film ever, but in my head it is. In terms of a superhero movie, this is perfect to me. The only flaw that I have with it is that I don't think Heath Ledger's in it enough. But the thing is, that's not a bad thing, because you want the audience to be wanting more. You don't want them to think, oh god, it's too much of him, like, get rid of him. This movie, I think it does give you the right amount of the Joker. This movie, from start to finish, I just adore. I think the pacing of it, I think the direction, the actual plot of it is perfect. One of those rare occasions where the sequel is not only better than the original, but it's not even close. It's miles better than Batman Begins. I don't think we are going to have a better Batman movie than this. Obviously, what happens with Matt Reeves' film, we'll have to see, but I don't think that you can top this. I genuinely don't. Certain moments in this film really get you thinking, like the boat scene as well with the prisoners and the civilians, where it's like, oh well, you've both got a bomb, you know, one of you can survive if you blow the other one up, or you can both die, and all that sort of stuff. I love those moral dilemmas, and I love the fact that this movie constantly gives you thrills, it constantly gives you twists. The Harvey Dent plotline, I think, is beautifully done. Christian Bale, again, is great as Batman. Admittedly, this is when his voice starts to go a bit weird, so I'm not the one wearing hockey pads. Might want to get a soother for that, lad. But of course, let's talk about Heath Ledger's Joker, because that is the main thing that people want to talk about when it comes to The Dark Knight. He's fucking fantastic. With his performance, you don't get a sense of who he is, why he's doing it, where he comes from. Well, you do get a slight hint of where he comes from. There's obviously a bit of PTSD there. However, I love the fact that Michael Caine says that line of, I didn't even mention Michael Caine, he's fucking perfect as Alfred, by the way, perfect casting. But I love the line that he says where he's like, some men just want to watch the world burn. And for me, and I think a lot of people subsequently, that has just summarised the Joker, and it definitely does in this film. I love the fact that everything that he doesn't do it for money, he doesn't do it for power or for fame, he does it just because he can, and he finds it fun. And that is exactly who the Joker is to me. I love the little nuances in his performance as well. I like the little lip smacking that he does because he's scarred and he's got his makeup on that's getting in his face. I love the fact that it is makeup as well. I love that he isn't stained like a lot of versions of the Joker are. That scene in the prison, well, the interview room, at least, in the police station, fantastic from start to finish. Like the way that he delivers lines, the way that he enters a room, his laugh, just everything about his performance to me is perfect. People are of course going to have the favourites, whether it is Jack Nicholson, whether it is Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, Jared Leto, Cesar Romero, whoever it might be, but for me, this is my Joker. I remember being absolutely mesmerised when I watched it in the cinema, and I still am to this day. It's a fantastic performance for me. And like I say, from start to finish, I'm hooked in this film. I absolutely adore it. In the comments below though, guys, let me know what you think. What is your favourite Batman film, and what would your rankings be? Do you agree with my choices? Do you not? I imagine some people will have stuff to say about the Burton films, but look, it's just my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description as always, so if you would follow me on any of those things, I would absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. Next up, we're going to be talking about the other Joel Macker. No.